On a moonless night in the New Mexico desert, Ethan Morgan was doing what he did best, fixing things that others had given up on. His workshop, a converted barn on the outskirts of nowhere, hummed with the sound of power tools as he restored a classic motorcycle. The solitude suited him. After 15 years in the Air Force, he'd had enough excitement for one lifetime. The first sign that this night would be different was the way his coffee rippled in its cup. Then came the sound, a high-pitched whine that made his teeth ache. He stepped outside just in time to see a streak of purple fire tear across the sky, leaving a trail of shimmering debris in its wake. The object crashed less than a mile from his workshop, carving a deep furrow through the desert floor. Common sense told him to call the authorities. 20 years of military training screamed at him to secure the perimeter. Instead, he grabbed his first aid kit and a flashlight, then headed toward the impact site. The crater glowed with an otherworldly light, casting strange shadows across the desert sage. That's when he saw them, a tall figure emerging from the wreckage, carrying something small and precious. As they stumbled toward him, the moonlight revealed their features. The woman's skin had an iridescent quality, like mother of pearl, and her hair seemed to capture and reflect starlight. The child in her arms couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, with the same ethereal features as her mother. "Please," the woman said in perfect English, though her voice carried harmonics no human throat could produce. "We seek asylum." She swayed on her feet, clearly injured. Ethan moved forward to steady her. "I'm Ethan Morgan. My workshop's just over that ridge. Can you walk?" "I am Naira," she replied, her voice growing weaker. "This is my daughter, Zira. We are far from home." "Yeah, I figured that part out," Ethan said dryly. "Let's get you both inside before someone else notices you're landing." As he helped them toward his workshop, Zira spoke for the first time, her voice like wind chimes in a breeze. "Mother, his aura is kind." Ethan almost stumbled at that, but kept moving. The night was getting colder, and he could see lights in the distance. Someone else had noticed the crash. They needed to move quickly. Once inside, he secured the doors and windows while Naira settled Zira on his worn couch. The child's eyes were huge and luminous in the workshop's fluorescent lighting, taking in everything with quiet curiosity. "All right," Ethan said, pulling up a chair. "I'm guessing this isn't a casual visit to Earth. Want to tell me what kind of trouble you're in?" Naira's expression darkened. "We are being hunted by those who would see our entire civilization erased from history. I am the last surviving member of the High Council of Lamaria, and Zira." She touched her daughter's head gently. "She is our people's last hope." Ethan looked between them, his mind racing through the implications. He'd left the military to get away from world-changing decisions and life-or-death situations. Yet here he was, faced with 2 refugees from the stars who needed his help. "Well," he said finally, "looks like retirement's going to have to wait." Dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Ethan hadn't slept. He'd spent the night treating Naira's injuries, cuts and burns that leaked silver fluid instead of blood, while keeping watch for any signs of pursuit. Zira had finally dozed off on his couch, curled up beneath an old Air Force blanket. Naira stood by the workshop's single window, her iridescent skin catching the first rays of sunlight. "You have questions," she said, not turning around. "About 1,000,000, Ethan replied, pouring himself another cup of coffee. "But let's start with the basics. What's Lamaria?" "A civilization that spanned 1,000 star systems," Naira said, her voice heavy with memory. "We were peacekeepers, scholars, explorers. Our technology helped lift countless species from planetary bounds to interstellar flight." "Were," Ethan noted. Past tense. Naira finally turned to face him. "The Shadow Collective saw our advancement as a threat. They believe that evolution demands conflict, that peace breeds weakness. They spent decades infiltrating our systems, turning our own people against each other. A civil war? A massacre, Naira corrected. They attacked our core worlds first, using weapons we had outlawed centuries ago. Billions died in the first hour. Those of us who survived. She glanced at Zira. We scattered to the winds. Ethan processed this, thinking of his own combat experience. And Earth? Why here? Your world is considered primitive by galactic standards, Naira said, then quickly added, no offense intended. None taken. We're working on it. That's precisely why we came. The Shadow Collective believes humanity too underdeveloped to be worth monitoring. And your species has something rare in the galaxy, potential. You advance quickly, adapt readily. In time, you could become something remarkable. A distant rumbling made them both tense. Helicopters, still far off but getting closer. Ethan moved to the window, scanning the horizon. Looks like someone noticed your arrival after all. Military? Naira asked, moving to wake Zira. Probably. But they're not who you should be worried about. Ethan grabbed a duffel bag and started filling it with supplies. The real problem will be the ones behind them. Black Ops, shadow agencies, the kind of people who'd love to get their hands on advanced alien tech. Zira stirred, her luminous eyes taking in the situation immediately. They're coming, aren't they? The bad ones? Not if I can help it, kiddo. Ethan checked his watch. I've got a backup plan, but you'll have to trust me. Both of you. Naira lifted her chin, every inch the royal she was. We placed our lives in your hands the moment we landed. Yeah, well, this is different. Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. I'm calling in some old favors. There's a network of people, former military, intelligence types who got tired of following orders they couldn't stomach. We help people disappear when they need to. An underground resistance? Naira asked, surprised. More like a bunch of stubborn veterans with too much time on their hands and a problem with authority. The call connected. Hey, Marcus? Yeah, it's Morgan. Remember that favor you owe me from Damascus? Time to pay up. Within minutes, a plan was taking shape. The helicopters were getting closer, their thundering rotors now clearly audible. Ethan led Naira and Zira to his garage, where an old but well-maintained Jeep waited. We need to move fast, he said, helping them in. I've got a safe house about 6 hours north, up in the mountains. My friends will meet us there with new identities and supplies. As they pulled out of the garage, Zira looked back at the workshop. Will they hurt your home? Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, watching as the helicopters descended on his property. Places can be rebuilt, kid. People are harder to replace. The desert stretched out before them, a vast expanse of sand and stone that had seen countless secrets buried in its depths. Now it would hide one more, the story of an alien princess, her daughter, and the mechanic who chose to help them when the stars themselves had turned their backs. Ethan, Naira said softly as they sped north, thank you. He kept his eyes on the road, but allowed himself a small smile. Don't thank me yet, Your Highness. Something tells me this is just the beginning. The mountain roads twisted like serpents through the darkness, their Jeep's headlights cutting through the thick fog that had rolled in at sunset. Ethan drove with practiced precision, every turn calculated, every junction carefully considered. In the passenger seat, Naira monitored a device she'd salvaged from their crash, a sleek crystalline tablet that pulsed with alien script. 2 vessels have entered Earth's atmosphere, she announced, her voice tense. Shadow Collective hunters. Great, Ethan muttered, taking another sharp turn. Because Earth's authorities weren't enough of a problem. Any chance they're friendly? The Shadow Collective doesn't send diplomats, Naira replied. In the back seat, Zira pulled her knees to her chest, making herself smaller. They send executioners. The safe house appeared ahead, an old ranger station perched on the edge of a cliff, its weathered exterior blending perfectly with the surrounding rocks. As they pulled up, Ethan noticed fresh tire tracks in the gravel. Marcus is already here. Inside, they found a tall man with silver hair and a military bearing waiting for them. Marcus Chen hadn't changed much since their days in special operations, save for a new scar along his jaw. He looked at Naira and Zira, blinked twice, then turned to Ethan. When you said you had interesting guests, I thought maybe witness protection. Not this. Surprise, Ethan said dryly. Got those papers I asked for? Marcus handed over a thick envelope. New identities for all of you. But Morgan, we've got bigger problems. Every intelligence agency on the planet is looking for your friends. Satellite footage, thermal imaging, the works. And that's not the weird part. What's the weird part? Ethan asked, though he had a feeling he knew. Their systems keep failing. Satellites go dark, data gets corrupted. It's like something's interfering with Earth's entire surveillance network. Naira's expression darkened. The hunters. They're clearing their hunting ground. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows. Zira moved closer to her mother, her luminous eyes wide. They're getting closer. I can feel them. Marcus raised an eyebrow at Ethan, who shook his head. Don't ask. What's our next move? Before Marcus could answer, every electronic device in the cabin went dead. The lights flickered out, plunging them into darkness broken only by the ethereal glow of Naira's tablet and the faint luminescence of her skin. They're here, she whispered. The night exploded. A beam of sickly green energy sliced through the cabin's roof, carving the building in half. Ethan grabbed Zira while Marcus pulled Naira toward the hidden cellar door. They tumbled down the stairs as the safe house collapsed above them. The tunnel network, Marcus shouted over the chaos. It leads to an old military bunker. We need to move. They ran through narrow passages carved decades ago, the sound of destruction echoing behind them. Zira kept pace without complaint, her small feet barely seeming to touch the ground. Naira brought up the rear, her tablet casting strange shadows on the rock walls. These hunters, Ethan called back as they ran, any chance of fighting them? With your world's current technology? Naira's laugh was bitter. We might as well throw rocks at a star. Then we need a better plan. Marcus led them through another junction. The bunker has a direct line to some people who might be able to help. Old guard types who've been preparing for extraterrestrial contact. More of your conspiracy friends? Ethan asked. Says the man running from alien assassins with a space princess. A new sound joined the chaos, a high-pitched whine that made their teeth ache. Zira stumbled, clutching her head. Mother, they're using the song. Naira's face contorted in pain. Sonic weapons. They're trying to disorient us. Ethan scooped Zira up without breaking stride. The tunnel ahead split into 3 branches. Marcus pointed to the right. That one. Half a mile to the bunker. They were almost there when the tunnel behind them exploded. Through the dust emerged 2 figures that haunted Ethan's nightmares for years after, tall, skeletal forms in armor that seemed to drink in light itself. Their faces were hidden behind masks that reflected their own fears back at them. Keep going. Naira spun to face the hunters, her hands beginning to glow with an inner light. I'll hold them off. Like hell, Ethan passed Zira to Marcus. Get her to safety. I'm staying. Ethan, you can't dash. Your Highness, he drew his sidearm, knowing it was probably useless but unwilling to leave her alone. With all due respect, shut up and let me help. The hunters advanced, their movements liquid smooth. Naira's power built until she blazed like a star, illuminating the tunnel with pure white light. And in that moment, as human and alien stood together against the darkness, the real battle for Earth's future began. The underground bunker thrummed with tension as Marcus tended to their wounds. Naira's attack had bought them precious time, though not without cost. Her silver blood stained the makeshift bandages wrapped around her arm, and Ethan's shoulder bore an angry burn where one of the hunter's weapons had grazed him. "You're either the bravest human I've met," Naira said quietly, watching him wince as Marcus cleaned the wound, "or the most foolish." "Can't I be both?" Ethan managed a grin despite the pain. "Besides, those guys weren't so tough." "You shot one in the face and it barely blinked," Marcus pointed out, applying antiseptic. "Yeah, but it blinked." Zira sat cross-legged on a nearby cot, her hands moving through complex patterns that left trails of light in the air. She hadn't spoken since their escape, but her eyes followed every movement in the room. The bunker itself was a relic of the Cold War, its walls lined with outdated communications equipment and maps yellowed with age. "The hunters will return," Naira said, her voice heavy. "And they won't underestimate us again." Marcus finished bandaging Ethan's shoulder. "Then maybe it's time we stop running and start fighting back. My contacts have been monitoring unusual energy signatures across the globe. We think we've found something that might interest you." He spread a map across a steel table, pointing to a location deep in the Rockies. "There's an old research facility here. Been abandoned for decades, officially. But our satellites keep picking up power readings that shouldn't exist." Naira moved closer, her expression sharpening. "Show me the data." Marcus pulled up readings on a laptop. Naira's eyes widened as she studied them. "This is impossible. These are Lemurian energy signatures." "Wait," Ethan joined them at the table. "You're saying there's alien tech just sitting in an abandoned facility in the mountains? Not just any technology." Naira's fingers traced the patterns on the screen. "This was a backup facility, established centuries ago when we first discovered Earth. A safeguard in case our civilization ever fell. And now it has," Marcus said quietly. Zira suddenly spoke, her voice carrying that otherworldly harmony that still sent shivers down Ethan's spine. "The archive is awakening. It feels our presence." "Archive?" Ethan looked between mother and daughter. "A repository of Lemurian knowledge and technology," Naira explained. "But it was never meant to be accessed by." She hesitated. "Primitives like us?" Ethan supplied dryly. "I was going to say, those unprepared for its power." Naira's expression softened. "But you've proven yourself far more adaptable than we expected." A distant rumbling made them all tense. Marcus checked the security feeds. "We've got company. Multiple vehicles approaching from the north." "Government?" Ethan asked. "Worse. Private military contractors. The kind with more money than morals and enough firepower to start a small war." Naira's hands clenched. "They'll have detection equipment. We can't stay here." "No," Ethan agreed, already gathering supplies. "But we're not running anymore. If this archive exists, it's our best shot at evening the odds." "The facility will be guarded," Marcus warned. "Good thing I've got a space princess and a conspiracy theorist on my team then." Ethan checked his weapon, then looked at Naira. "You trust me?" She held his gaze for a long moment. "You stayed to fight creatures that could have killed you instantly. You've sheltered us, protected us, risked everything for people you just met." "Yes, Ethan Morgan, I trust you." "Then let's go steal some alien tech and save the world." He turned to Zira. "You up for an adventure, kiddo?" The girl's answering smile lit up the room, literally, as small points of light danced around her. "Can I drive?" "Not a chance." Ethan helped her up. "But you can be our lookout." Those powers of yours might come in handy. They emerged from the bunker through a secondary exit, leaving false trails for their pursuers to follow. The mountain air was crisp with approaching dawn, and somewhere in the distance, their destiny waited in a forgotten facility. I should warn you, Naira said as they loaded their gear into Marcus's reinforced SUV, the Archive's defenses won't distinguish between friend and foe. It was designed to protect itself at all costs. Story of my life, Ethan muttered. Always falling for dangerous women with complicated security systems. For the first time since they'd met, Naira laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes in a summer breeze. And how many alien princesses have you fallen for, exactly? Oh, you know, 1 or 2. I try to keep it under a dozen per year. Marcus rolled his eyes as he started the engine. If you two are done flirting, we've got about 20 minutes before those contractors figure out we've slipped their net. They pulled out onto a narrow mountain road just as the sun crested the horizon. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Ahead lay either salvation or destruction. And somewhere above, the hunters watched and waited, their dark ships hidden in the clouds. Mother, Zira said suddenly, her voice carrying a note of prophecy that made them all listen, the stars are changing. Naira looked at her daughter, then at Ethan. Yes, she said softly. They are. The research facility rose from the mountainside like a forgotten castle, its concrete walls stained by decades of harsh weather. Snow dusted the abandoned guard posts and rusted security fences, creating an illusion of peaceful abandonment. But Ethan knew better, he could feel eyes watching them, both human and otherwise. The Archive's defenses are active, Naira whispered, her tablet pulsing with increasingly urgent patterns. It senses the hunters approaching. They crouched behind a fallen section of wall, Marcus scanning the perimeter with high-powered binoculars. 2 teams of contractors at the main entrance. Professional setup, thermal imaging, motion sensors, the works. Can we go around? Ethan asked, keeping one hand on Zira's shoulder to stop her from peeking over the wall. No need. Naira's fingers danced across her tablet. The facility recognizes my genetic signature. There's another way in. A low rumble shook the ground, and a section of mountainside simply shifted, revealing a dark passage that definitely hadn't been built by human hands. The walls gleamed with the same bioluminescent veins they'd seen in the bunker, pulsing in rhythmic patterns. Okay, Ethan muttered, that's pretty cool. They slipped inside just as the first explosion rocked the facility. The hunters had arrived, apparently done with subtlety. The passage sealed behind them, plunging them into darkness broken only by the wall's ethereal glow and Naira's natural luminescence. The archive chamber is deep underground, Naira explained as they hurried through the winding corridors. If we can reach it before dash. A screech of torn metal interrupted her. Something was ripping through the facility's outer layers, hunting them with mechanical precision. Zira grabbed Ethan's hand, her small fingers trembling. They're angry now, she whispered. The shadows are hungry. The corridor ahead split into multiple branches. Naira hesitated, studying the ancient markings on the walls. Above them, the sounds of destruction grew closer. We need a plan, Marcus said, checking his ammunition. These passages are perfect for an ambush. Ethan looked at Naira. The archive, what exactly can it do? It contains the sum of our civilization's knowledge. Weapons, defenses, healing technologies. In the right hands, it could. Save your people? Ethan suggested. Or destroy them entirely. Naira's expression hardened. The Shadow Collective would use it to ensure no trace of Lamaria ever survives. Another explosion, closer now. Dust rained from the ceiling. Marcus checked the motion tracker he'd brought. Multiple signatures converging. We've got maybe 5 minutes. Ethan made a decision. Marcus, take Zira. Find a defensible position and keep her safe. Ethan, no, Naira started, but he cut her off. The hunters want you. They'll follow you to the archive. But if we split up? He looked at Zira. They won't risk losing their chance at capturing both of you. A diversion, Marcus nodded. But they'll kill you. They can try. Ethan managed a grin. I'm pretty hard to kill. Just ask my ex-wife. Naira touched his face, her fingers leaving trails of cool light on his skin. You impossible man. Then she turned to Zira, kneeling before her daughter. Remember your training, little star. Stay silent, stay hidden. Zira hugged her mother fiercely, then stepped back to Marcus's side. Her eyes met Ethan's. Don't let the shadows take her. Not a chance, kiddo. They split up, Marcus and Zira taking the left passage while Ethan and Naira headed right. The hunters would have to divide their forces, giving them all a better chance at survival. The archive chamber, when they finally reached it, took Ethan's breath away. The vast circular room was filled with pillars of light, each containing what looked like pure energy given form. Symbols and equations danced through the air, and at the center stood a crystalline structure that hummed with power. The heart of Lamaria, Naira breathed. All that remains of our golden age. And now it belongs to us. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The hunters materialized from the shadows, their armor drinking in the archive's light. Their leader stepped forward, removing his mask to reveal a face that might once have been Lemurian but was now more machine than flesh. Princess Naira, he said, his voice carrying the same harmonics as hers but twisted, wrong. The last of the High Council. Did you really think you could hide forever? Commander Vax. Naira's voice dripped contempt. Still playing servant to the collective? Playing? Vax laughed. We are the future. Evolution demands conflict. Your peaceful utopia was stagnation given form. Yeah. Ethan raised his weapon. How's this for conflict? The fight that followed would haunt his dreams for years. Naira unleashed powers he hadn't known she possessed, turning the very air into a weapon. The hunters moved like liquid shadow, their weapons carving chunks from the ancient walls. Ethan's bullets seemed to pass right through them, but he kept firing, kept moving, drawing their attention while Naira worked her way toward the archive's core. Then everything went wrong. A hunter's blade caught him in the leg, sending him sprawling. Vax seized Naira by the throat, lifting her off her feet. Watch closely, human, he snarled. Watch as the last light of Lamaria fades. But Vax had made a mistake. He'd forgotten about Zira. The girl appeared in the chamber's highest doorway, her small form blazing with power. Marcus stood behind her, his expression a mix of awe and fear. Zira raised her hands, and the archive responded. Every pillar of light in the chamber turned to her, drawn to her presence like moths to a flame. The archive's power flowed into her, through her, transforming her into something both beautiful and terrible. The air, Vax whispered, his arrogance finally cracking. The archive accepts her. My daughter, Naira said proudly, even as Vax's grip tightened, is the future you fear so much. Zira spoke a single word in the ancient Lemurian tongue. The chamber erupted with light, and the battle for Earth's destiny reached its turning point.